Welcome to part one of Chloe's best builds. This is a new series I'm going to be doing where I go over the best classes for each unit, and I'm going to break them down by build. So today we're starting with Chloe Royal Knight. Now here are Chloe's growths. She has pretty good HP, strength, magic, dex, speed, and a little bit of build. And Royal Knight actually gives magic and strength. So she has essentially a home here. She can be a Royal Knight. So Royal Knight is basically a Griffin Knight, but on the ground. Now, it can't run Levin Sword because it's locked to lances, but it can still be relevant. It can still do quite a bit. So if you want to run this over Griffin, the main reason would be you want staff use, and you want to be on physical lances, and to some degree, Flame Lance if you want to use that. But the main use case is physical lances, plus healing, and losing flyer weakness. The Reforge can be okay if you want to restore broken units so that they can continue enemy phasing. But outside of that, it's basically a Griffin Knight that doesn't have flyer weakness that's locked to Lancers. Alright, so first things first, let's talk about passives. Alright, so for passives, here are, I would say, the top passives for this class. Lance Power for damage, Canter for repositioning, Speed Plus for doubling consistently, same thing with Speed Taker. Now, you don't run Speed Plus with Speed Taker, that's generally a waste, so you can run any combination of those. For the next set, we have other options, so this would be for more survivability, so you would be dealing less damage, you wouldn't be doubling as consistently, or you could run, like Speed Plus with Avoid Tanking, so the first three are Avoid Tanking. Lance Agility is for, self-tanking, you don't have to be near people. Dual Support is really good with a bunch of A supports, you can spike up your Avoid if you have really good positional play. Avoid Plus is kind of expensive, but it can be about as good as Lance Agility, though Lance Agility is easier to get to max because you don't have to get Marth back. Holdout can be good for surviving lethal damage, so it's worth mentioning. For the bottom row, we have Lunar Brace if you want to have more player phase only damage. Lance Power is better, but it's more expensive because it works in enemy phase. Quality Time if you want to get extra health, extra healing when just, performing actions, and especially when using staves. And then, of course, Staff Mastery for increased healing, and in some cases, increased hit rates when using offensive staves. All right, for weapons. So I think the best weapon on this class is Fensalar. This is consistently one of the best weapons for units like Chloe and Tamara, who have good speed but kind of medium build. So this allows them to double consistently without taking a hit to speed from weight. Next, you have the Well Lance, which when upgraded can essentially be weightless, especially when engraved. Then you have Javelin. So these are your main weapons, and then these are other alternates. Let's say you don't have this, or you don't use the Well Lance. Steel Lance and Silver Lance are fine, and then Flame Lance to some degree can be used here. Flame Lance with Lance Power on a fast unit can one-round a lot of things. It's not as good as Levin Sword, but it's still pretty close. It's just much heavier and does slightly less damage. All right, and then for the other weapons, it's just staves, right? Because it's just lances and staves. So Mend is really good. Mend and Treat. You should have one. You should basically have one heal staff on this unit. I would run one of your main weapons, so a Hero, Well, Lance, Silver, or Steel, and then a Javelin. You have one of these plus a Javelin, and then a heal, and then an Obstruct. I usually run a heal and Obstruct on staff utilities, so she only has C rank in this, so you're not going to be doing things like Warp or Rescue. You can, however, rewarp. She can rewarp herself. She can also rewarp AoE with Micaiah if you want. She has access to Physic. You could have Physic as an optional thing. Then, of course, Restore. And there are other things like Freeze, if you want to run that. Silence, I believe, is B, but Freeze, I think, is C, so you could run Freeze. For engravings, this is the order. So Sigurd engraving should not go on Fensalar because Fensalar is light enough that it's not going to slow you down. This should only go on Silver Lance or the Well Lance. Beginnings, this could go on any of these, but it's decent on Fensalar. You could also throw it on Steel. You could throw it on Well or Silver, but they'll still slow you down a little bit. This doesn't reduce weight. Lucina is really good because it allows you to you lose a damage, but you lose a weight, so weight fixes, and you also get plus 30 hit and avoid. So if you want to be an avoid tank and you want to reduce the weight of your weapon, this can be very valuable, especially when combining with like lance agility, and you're looking at potentially plus 60 avoid just by existing, plus all your avoid from speed. Leaf is really good on Fensalar because its weight gets pretty low and it's pretty cheap to upgrade. So if you max this thing out or gets like plus 4, you can run Leaf, and you will get a weight increase, but you lose so much weight from upgrading that you won't see a speed reduction. He also increases hit and damage. And then Micaiah reduces damage by, I think, like 2 to 3, but it also reduces weight and increases avoid by 40. So if you want to throw this on like the Well Lance or Silver Lance, you could do that to both weight fix and avoid tank. So that's an option for those heavier weapons. I wouldn't really run it on like Fensalar or Steel. I think that you're better off running Lucina on those. And then Celica, this reduces weight by 1 and damage by 1. So this can be used on heavier lances, and very few things want to use this. It also gives you basically plus 50 crit avoid. So you are now immune to crits, which is useful, but it's worth mentioning. Okay, and then for emblems, I think one of the best emblems is Sigurd for this, because with this build, so you could run Sigurd, you don't have to run Canter now because you get Canter from Sigurd. So you could run Lance Power and then Speed Plus. Sigurd is also generally not highly contested, so if you want to just run this as like, you know, a secondary damage carry, like a unit that's not like one of your best units, but can still one round or double and consistently deal damage, this can be a good option. It's also lowly contested. Now, obviously, running Lance Power with like Speed Plus is quite expensive in terms of SP, so you could run like Lance Power 2 and like Speed Plus 3, and that's quite cheap. If you're using well, you could get this to like Lance Power 3 and then like Speed Plus 4, and that's probably good enough if you're not running it as a hard carry. If you want to run this as a hard carry, Sigurd still is a good emblem, so you could run like Lance Power 4 to 5, Speed Plus 5 or Speed Taker, and then you get Canter for free. And you also get some build, so if you're running like Well Lance, you will lose some weight from that. Same thing with Silver. So this can help. It gives you move, it gives you Canter, it gives you defense, it also gives you dex. But the extra build, I think it's like plus 2 to 3 build, can help offset like a Silver Lance. So if you're not using DLC, Well Lance, like technically the Well Lance is free. It's not DLC, but you might consider Heroes and Well Lance DLC. But you can run Silver or Well Lance on Sigurd. Pretty much any Lance just loses weight. It also helps enable Flame Lance because it gives you plus 3 build. So this heavily reduces the weight of this. So if you want to use this as a main weapon, you can. You can also do things like Override. And then Erica is a good option. So you get Lunar Brace, you get, you know, some extra tanking and chip healing, but mostly you'd be using this for Lunar Brace for extra damage on physical. Outside of that, it also increases magic. So Erica increasing magic means more damage on this if you plan on running it. But Lunar Brace plus Lance Power, you're going to be one-rounding everything pretty consistently. Also, between the two of these are not like super highly contested. These are like moderately contested, so I'm starting with these first. Roy is quite good because he gives you holdout for free. He gives you a fiery AoE attack that can reduce and delay enemies for a turn. So if it's on a tanky unit or a unit that can tank a hit, it can help you out. So like the holdout plus the delay. You also get strength increase. So Roy drastically boosts strength by like 6 at max rank. So you get holdout plus for free, which makes you very hard to kill. And you also get plus 6 strength. So this plus Lance Power, you're one-rounding everything at this point. And Roy arguably is not very contested either. Like none of these are like must-haves for most units. They're just like nice. So, all right, and then we have Lyn. This is highly contested, so that's why this is 4th. But Lyn, you could drop the speed aspect and just go for like Lance Power Canter or whatever you want to do. You could alternatively still run like these two if you don't want the unit to have Canter. But with Lyn, you basically could just run that. The nice thing about Sigurd is you get Canter, so like Speed Plus and Lance Power are quite easy to start getting. You can get like Lance Power 2 pretty early, which is kind of nice. But yeah, Lyn, highly contested. Most units want her for speed fixing, whereas these ones not so much. Next, we have Lucina. So the idea on Lucina would be if you're running a bunch of mounted units, like horse units, that she would be the center. So this is why I'm mentioning all the avoid tanking stuff, because like you can still deal damage and be an avoid tank, but you could also be this like huge Lucina user that helps out. So you could run like Fensalar or Well Lance with like Micaiah or Lucina. So you get plus 30 avoid from this. And then if you run Lance Agility, you get plus 30 avoid from that. So you're looking at plus 60 avoid. And then with Lucina at bond rank, I think like 15 plus, whenever she unlocks dual support, it might be like 50, it might be like 13 to 17, it's somewhere in there. With dual support, if you have A rank supports, you get more avoid, so you become unhittable. And then you also have Reforge. So anytime anything gets broken, if it gets broken, you reset them and you're basically unhittable. So with Lucina, with a bunch of horses, like mounted units, like Mage Knights or something, maybe some Great Knights in there, you could do quite a bit. You have a 100% chance to trigger Bondage Shield when like another horse is near you. Like, so like if you're on cavalry and they're on cavalry, it triggers 100% success rate. So huge, that this actually could be hugely useful. This is more the utility route. These are more the damage routes. Like these are like more damage hard carry. This is more utility, but it's worth mentioning. That's quite easy to get it online. Chloe has good supports with like certain units. So that's worth mentioning. Like any unit, she doesn't even need that many. She just needs to be standing next to a Lear or just run like Lucina, Micaiah, plus Lance Agility, and you're good to go. And then finally, we have Marth. Marth is generally just like a good option for combat carries. You get extra hits when you break and when you're engaged. He also fixes strength and speed. So if you're on the physical route, you can just get extra damage. Now, obviously, Marth is super late game. That's why he's last, but he is worth mentioning. As like an honorable 7th mention, you could run Leaf on this to increase the build if you want to go the Flame Lance route. Leaf's build increase is quite substantial, so you would run like Leaf with like Lance Power and like Speed Plus or Speed Taker. You would probably not opt for Cancer with a Leaf build, but Leaf is also not contested. That's another emblem almost no one runs, but it's a pretty solid build. You have very few weaknesses. Your only weakness is really effective versus cavalry, which isn't too common in this game. So essentially, you just get a good bruiser damage dealer that can double in one run most things and has a lot of flexibility and can use staves and has options to just stay on physical, to spec into magical, has utility, and has Reforge, which can be useful if you enemy phase a lot. Reforge is kind of like a weak Chain Guard. Chain Guard can nullify a hit and prevent a break. Reforge, if someone does get broken, like let's say there's 3 enemies. You have an axe enemy and then 2 sword enemies, and you have a lance unit. So the axe enemy breaks your lance unit, and then Reforge triggers, fixing the break during enemy phase, and then the 2 sword enemies also attack that lance unit. If you didn't Reforge, you get 1 enemy phase attacks. If you do Reforge, you get 2. And 10 health really isn't that bad because Curious Dance triggers as soon as like the turn starts, so you're really only losing like 5 health if you do it correctly. So it is a nice tool that has some potential utility that's kind of untapped. All right, so this is the end of this one. I'm going to be doing one of these for each class per unit that's really good, that's relevant. Like this is one of the best classes for Chloe, so I'm going to do this for all of her best classes, and then I'm going to move on to the next unit. These, I was originally going to do these all at once, but then as I was like building up this Photoshop document, I'm like, there's no way I can do, like she has like 6 classes. This would be an hour long. Like there's no way I can cover all of this because I have to mention the interactions, the passives, how everything works out. All right, so that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe. Feel free to drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Also, we have channel membership, and I live stream Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. EST to 2 p.m. EST. Yeah, thanks for checking this out. Peace.